My name is Sammy Ijaz, and I'm your host for House of Politics. House of Politics is a talk show that brings on government officials from MPPs, MPs, councillors, and mayors, and interviews them on the things they've achieved in the past, why they got into politics in the first place, and where they're headed in 2020, 2021. Today, joining me is Zeeshan Hamid, a regional councillor for Ward 4 in Milton. Zeeshan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Zeeshan, thank you so much for coming on this show. I want to take you right back to where you were born, where'd you grow up, and where'd you go to school?
Oh man, all over the place. I was born in Pakistan. Yeah. Went to school there, did high school in Canada, in Mississauga.
Nice. What high school did you go to?
Oh, Arendelle.
Nice.
And Streetsville as well, actually.
Nice,
so I did both. And then Milton after that, yeah.
Nice. And what made the transition to Milton? And when did you move to Milton?
I moved to Milton in late 2000s. My dad went out in the 90s when I was in high school. My dad actually worked for Sergeant Farm. He still does, even now, actually, in retirement. So I was familiar with Milton, and I decided, even as a teenager, that if I ever bought a house, it would be in Milton, because I like that small community feel of Milton.
Right. Prior to politics, what did you do? Where were the ambitions? And tell me more about that.
I'm still a techie. I mean, I work for Microsoft and Amazon, the two tech companies, as a software development manager, and ran a bunch of teams there. Built health solutions for Microsoft and last mile delivery and fulfillment for Amazon. And now I'm involved in politics.
Right. So now, Milton, what's your favorite thing about Milton?
You know, like I said, small town community. It's a very good neighborly feel. Every time I come to Mississauga, don't get me wrong, I like coming to Mississauga, more shopping options, more retail, but it is a major city.
Right.
You go to Milton, you get this like nice, calm feeling. It's relaxed.
Right. So if you were given that option today, living in Mississauga or Milton, what would you choose?
Oh no, I would never leave Milton.
Is it because you're the councillor there?
No, even if I lose the election, I'm in Milton for life.
Okay. The Zeeshan Hamid 4 years ago versus today. Tell me some of the achievements, accomplishments, and things you've learned.
Oh yeah, so a lot of our accomplishment at municipal level, people don't realize, actually involves lobbying upper levels of government and working with them very, very closely. Right. We were very proud of getting approval for the hospital and getting a hospital built and getting all that stuff going, a velodrome built with funding from the federal government. We had the education funding that unfortunately for the university that got cut. Right. We're working on a public-private partnership thing that you should hear more about in 2 to 3 months.
Will that work?
I'm confident that it will actually.
What's it depending on? Like, is it that 50% of funding has to be put up by the town itself, or how what's the breakdown of it?
So I can tell you, I can't share much, but I can tell you that the town of Milton will not be putting any public money for the project.
So the taxes will not go up.
The tax money will not go to subsidize anything.
And any of the education cuts
That's right.
behind that.
In fact, we should actually get more money out of it once it's done.
With the idea of the Conservatives cutting down on the university as well as the education, we'll get into the education a little later, but is there a way you guys can convince, as you said, you guys are lobbyists, are you able to convince, let's say, the provincial government to get that started again?
I think we can, but not to the same level. I think that every time the government changes, their priorities change. Right. And one of the things you have to do as a lower level of government is understand what they're trying to achieve. Right. And then align yourself with that. So the previous government had a different way of doing things. This government has a different way of doing things. And we're learning what they want to achieve and how they want to achieve. And we'll figure out how to navigate that system.
Right. Now, under the, let's say, the Liberals previously versus now the Conservatives, has it become easier or harder to navigate your personal agenda as a councillor?
So, you know what, to be completely honest, every new government has its own politics and its own things, internal struggles. Right. So I don't think it's any easier or harder. It's just that when there's a change, the change becomes challenging because it takes a while to figure out. It takes a while for the provincial government to figure out what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it because they're new themselves. Right. And that change is actually very chaotic, but I think things have calmed down now, and now we know what they want to do and how they want to do it. Right. And that's when you'll hear about a lot of successes this year actually. Right.
Under the Conservatives, there has been clear cuts to education, to healthcare. Has there been cuts to council?
So there are a lot of funding.
The transfers that comes down to you
There's a lot of transfers that have been cut. There are changes that are happening in how we get development charges from developers. Right. They're uncertain right now, and the biggest issue isn't even the cut per se. It's the uncertainty because Milton is growing, new developments happening, and we have to approve this development now, but we don't know what changes are coming through. That's the harder issue to deal with. So
Right.
once we know what the rules are, we can figure out how to best play within those rules.
DC, under the Liberal government, what was it and what is it now?
So DC, unfortunately, it's something that it impacts every government. It's been going on since Mike Harris. So Mike Harris, McGuinty, Kathleen Wynne, and now Premier Ford.
Right.
It's the same issue.
Right.
It's very, the way it works in Ontario, the bottom line is, without getting too technical, growth does not pay for itself.
Right.
So existing taxpayers, like you and I, we end
Right.
up subsidizing developers. And our line always is the developers are making billions of dollars. Rightfully,
Right.
it's a business.
Right.
Good for them.
Absolutely.
But normal taxpayers should not be subsidizing development and growth.
Right.
And we should be able to charge enough that growth
Right.
pays for itself. That's not the case today, sadly.
In Milton and Ward 4, what is the front burner concern in your ward?
The number of issues, but generally across Milton, is infrastructure.
Okay.
So we're working very, very closely on it. One of my big goals when I got elected was to get Britannia Road going as soon as possible.
Right.
We, at that time, didn't have funding for the entire stretch. We've secured funding now, which is good.
Right.
We're expanding it to 6 lanes, all the way from Tremaine
So
to Mississauga.
Britannia would be 6 lanes.
6 lanes.
And what's the time frame on this?
So the time frame is one thing where I was hoping to get it done by 2022. Unfortunately, the completion will be 2023, just because of the way funding lined up and a lot of
Right.
other things. It's a lot of bridges, environmental assessment, and
And
property
is there any
acquisition that has to
hurdles
happen.
for 2023, or can we
There are
expect
no
it
hurdles.
absolutely 2023?
It's absolutely 100% 2023.
Okay.
It will be done in phases, so you'll have some parts that will be done before, some
Right.
parts that'll get done after, but overall everything should be finished and all
Right.
good to go by 2023.
Yeah, because that's one of the biggest issues of that new community, because there's cars and trucks zooming at 80 kilometers, 90 kilometers, 100 kilometers an hour, and there has been incidences, because I mean it was the same ward that we both were in, that people were complaining that these trucks are zooming and we're trying to get out, and it's
It's a
rather
rural
hazardous,
country road. It is not designed to carry urban traffic, and because of it, Derry then becomes heavier because
Yeah,
a lot
no,
of people end up
absolutely.
going to Derry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any expansions on Derry, by the way?
Derry is slated for expansion to 6 lane as well, but we can't touch Derry until Britannia is done.
So is it because it's a regional lane?
No. Until Britannia is done, Derry is a major artery.
Artery.
So we
Oh,
can't,
right,
we
right,
can't
right,
do anything
right,
in Derry
right,
until
right,
Britannia is
right.
done,
So
because people will have nowhere to go.
connectivity, right,
So
right,
we have
right,
to
right,
leave
right.
Derry as is until
Question
Britannia's
for you,
ready.
and of course, I mean, you weren't there to make this decision for Derry. Do you think Derry should have been always 6 lanes?
So what we've done now that we're at Region, and Region, to be fair, did it before I got elected to Region.
Right.
The new policy is that we, in a place like Milton,
Right.
that's growing so fast, we expand road to the maximum capacity right away.
Right.
And that's the reason why we're not doing Tremaine to 4, why we're not doing Britannia to 4 lanes now, and 2
Right.
lanes later, we're doing 6 lanes right off the bat.
Right.
That's what should have been done to Derry
Yeah, I mean,
as well.
Tremaine, sure, they did a good job with Tremaine. With the
Yeah, so
6 lanes,
Tremaine
yeah.
is getting expanded, but Derry should have been 6 lanes because it's much cheaper actually to do it that way.
Oh, you know what? We'll before going to a break, I want to talk to you about the CN Intramodal. The CN Intramodal is clearly a federal issue, but we all have a stake in it because it affects all of us in one way or another. Will there be a different route for those trucks to come into the actual hub? Because when we look at Tremaine and being 6 lanes on the outer skirts, it almost seems like the town and the province and the federal, you guys are planning for the actual outskirt route.
No, so intermodals have a whole host of issues that we don't have time to go into right now. But as far as truck traffic is concerned,
Right.
intermodals get the lowest, independent contractors. They're not
Right.
long haul drivers,
Right.
and they will take whatever route they need to take. Right, so they'll take Britannia, which is why City of Mississauga is heavily against intermodal in Milton,
Right.
because they're worried that these trucks will take Britannia through Mississauga to get to the delivery points,
Mississauga would get
or
affected as
Dundas,
well.
or Steeles, or Derry even.
right.
And so the
And
trucks
there's
will
no
take
regulations on that.
You cannot control, you cannot dictate where a driver goes.
Right.
So there is no way to bypass anything because they're going all over the place. They're picking up some intermodal, they might be
Right.
delivering it to Walmart warehouse or
Right.
Lowe's warehouse or some other warehouse, and they'll take the shortest route to get there.
Right. So can you not tell, let's say, CN, and say you're this multi-billion-dollar company, well, why don't you go ahead and create a different route for those trucks on the outer skirts of Milton that those trucks don't even come into
Two
Milton?
reasons. One, CN doesn't hire these drivers; they're independent contractors.
I see.
And
Okay.
two, because they're going all over the place.
Right,
They're not
right,
going
right,
from
right.
one place
One
to another
place
place.
to another,
They're distributing items all across GTA.
Right.
So depending on where they're going in GTA, they'll take the straightforward route that they need to take because they don't get paid as much, and they need to take the shorter time to take to deliver items, more deliveries they can do, and that's how they make money.
Right. So Z, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back and talk about the education village and specific other concerns that we saw in your last council meeting that were brought up, and I want to talk to you about that.
Sounds good.
And there you have it. We will be right back with a quick break. Keep watching House of Politics. Thank you very much. My name is Sammy Ijaz. Welcome back to House of Politics. Joining me today is Zeeshan Hamid from Milton Regional Council Ward 4. I'm going to dive right into the Milton transformation. Zeeshan, Milton transformation has been massive. Just if you look at it in the last 10 years, what are your thoughts on that, and where do you think we're headed with this transformation?
So I'll answer the last part first. Milton is going to be a 300,000 people community. So if you look at where
Time frame?
10, 15, 20 years. If you look at where Markham is today, that's a good model to look at what Milton is going to be, and then work your way backwards. So we're going through this transition, and I know transition period is hard because sometimes you get a lot of residential growth, but you haven't gotten the business growth yet.
Or
you haven't gotten infrastructure yet, right? So that
yeah.
business growth is coming starting last year, actually. So you'll see 2019, we had a lot of business growth, 2020, 2021, because businesses tend to follow people. They wait until people are there, and then they come. So you'll see this transition happen, and unfortunately, we're still in that process. But we're now at a point where we're catching up in infrastructure, where we're bringing in more businesses and more jobs,
plazas.
And more retail. That's right.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. The Milton Education Village seems to be one of the most attractive things in Milton. What's your take on the Milton Education Village? When is it going to get completed? And with the cuts from the provincial government, how big of an effect has that been on MEV?
I think because of the cut, the process will be slower. But it will still start. Because, like I said, we have something working on that you should hear the announcement fairly soon, like in the next 2 to 3 months. Now, that said, though, this was always going to be, once you have a university, it's a 200-year project. It's going to be there for a few centuries. So it doesn't matter if you're starting a year later or 2 years later. It will be there for a very long time.
And what is it? The land's about 150 acres?
So the entire education village land is actually 450 acres.
450 acres.
The university gets, the education, the actual campus area, colleges, universities, all combined together, get about 150 acres. And the others is just normal neighborhood. But there will be a different type of neighborhood. It'll be very urban, very walkable.
So it'll be like a city within a town, kind of ish.
We will actually more of a village within a town.
Village within a town.
And Milton Education Village will actually have different signage and different entrance. And as soon as you cross over to Education Village, you'll visually see that it looks very different from rest of
So will it look like, let's say, when you go to London, when you go to that Western kind of concept, you're like, you know what, yes, this is a
It will be very
university
unique because we don't have a lot of examples of an entire area being designed from scratch. Because normally what happens is universities go in and they start to change existing neighborhoods, and students move to existing neighborhoods. We are going to prevent that because we have this whole blank slate that we're starting from.
So we can hope that it's going to happen, but it may take some time.
In the next 10 years, you'll have a fully functioning education village with a beautiful main street.
Well, that's fantastic.
With Main Street that appeals to
people.
Will
Main Street be renovated? Will there be an uplift to Main Street, especially that downtown commercial?
Our Main Street, that's a different issue. But our Main Street, yes, it's actually already happening. You'll notice that we used to have an old Canada Post building they just demolished, and we're going to change it into. Mississauga has a Celebration Square, something similar to Mississauga Celebration Square, which will bring more and more people to Milton. We're also building parking structure on Main Street. So right now the one problem is Main Street is that we have enough parking, but it's distributed and it's hard to find. Parking structure will bring all parking into one area, and they'll make it easy for people to go to downtown Milton and eat there and shop there. So you'll see a revitalization of downtown soon.
Talk about transit, and I just want to talk about just the parking on GO Transit. I know it's not an issue for the municipal government, but is there a way you can layer parking just like other GO stations have? Let's say if you were talking, let's say Palmgill or the next individual that comes in that wants to make the community better and transit better, a lot of people do say, why not layer the actual parking? What's the issue? What's the hurdle in not layering parking?
Honestly, it's just money, and it's a provincial thing, so province will have to approve it. One other issue that, I had a very different position in my political campaign, which is we are adding some, not we, province, Metrolinx will add some parking on Nipissing and connect it to the GO parking lot.
So would that be the additional on top of the 850 that they added?
No, it's the 850 that's going to be added. It's not added yet right now.
Okay,
nothing's happening yet.
So once they add that, then
that's 850.
Right.
But then, you know what? Think of it from a traffic perspective as well. We actually don't want more parking there.
Right.
Because that area is already getting choked up. You don't want another 2,000 people coming in every morning to the same area.
Right.
What you want to do is distribute traffic. So working with the province and private partners to try to get a GO station on Trafalgar.
Right.
Because the same line can stop at Trafalgar and continue, and that will distribute traffic.
And what's the time frame? Let's say if you were to put a time frame on such a project, what would the time frame look like?
Time frame's challenging because that is not something in provincial plans right now. That's what I talked about before the break, that we're lobbying the province to get that going.
Right.
But we have an idea where we're working with developers and private partners. So we're not asking province for money. We're not saying, hey, spend $200 million building this thing. We're saying, province, look, man,
approve it.
These guys are willing to invest money and get this going. There's some logistic challenges they're working on. I'm fairly confident that before the next election, we'll have something on Trafalgar.
That would be pretty interesting.
Yep.
In your in one of your recent council meetings, the masjid came in, the Milton Masjid, and their people, and they said they wanted a land request. I want you to explain to our viewers what they were requesting, and how you, as a councillor, that we have nearly 30,000 people in Milton, and we both happen to be Muslim. So when someone comes to us and says we want to build a masjid and we want your help, and I was sitting in that council meeting, and from what I got out of it, on one hand they said money wasn't an issue, and on the other hand they said money was an issue because we got outbid. So where do you stand on this?
I think money is the core issue, really, right? Because if you look at Milton, we have no shortage of land. We have no shortage of development. It really comes down to money because land has gotten really expensive. And it's a problem at a general level that hits every nonprofit. So you could have churches or temples or mosques. You could have a theater group, right? You could have a social community club. Any problem. We have Italian Cleaning Club in Milton that bought land decades ago, and Croatian Club, but any new community moving in and wanting to do it today, if you had Pakistani Association in Milton wanting to buy it, they wouldn't be able to, because it comes down to money. Because everything's extremely expensive.
So when they came to you, what are they requesting?
I think that
what did you get out of it?
Right. So I'll tell you what I got out of it. What I got out of it is that when we're designing a community, we as in the planners should think about allocating some space for a community use. So we don't have to decide exactly what the community uses, but imagine in every neighborhood, we do plan a big neighborhood park in the middle of the neighborhood because it makes it easy for people to get to. Generally, elementary school, public and Catholic, are next to that park. Like that's how it's designed, so it makes it easy for people to get to. Imagine
and the schools benefit.
And imagine if we had another area for community benefit. Now that could be a mosque, that could be a church, that
or
could
a community
be a
center
group
that people can use.
Absolutely.
Just like sports center.
So like a non-profit group, because today, if you leave it to market, the problem is that if you're a non-profit, it's very difficult for you to compete with, let's say, Mattamy, that's going to make hundreds of millions of dollars from the project, and you're not going to make a profit from the project. So it's a very difficult, unlevel playing field. And community needs spiritual places, they need community places, they need public places. And so how do we bridge that gap? I think that's something we need to figure out.
So is that something that you and, let's say, other councillors that understand and have the same perspective will be looking to potentially put into the new official plan, where, worship, 30,000 Muslims is not a small amount, considering we were at about 125,000 Miltonians, 130,000 Miltonians. How would you go about it? I agree with you that, what I got out of it was, on every corner of the town, they want a worship place. So, is that doable?
If you look at our Trafalgar Exeter secondary plan, we've already put some of that in there, and we've already had identified areas that are suitable for places of worship. That said, anyone wanting to build a place of worship would still have to go through the market system and compete. So you can still be outbid. We do not have the authority, nor should we have the authority, to go up and say this will only be this specific religious institution, or this specific brand of this specific. We can come out and say, look, we envision a place of worship over here. But then you'll still have to compete with each other.
Whether it's a church or a masjid, does the council help with funding it?
No, we cannot. We should not really, because I don't think government should be involved in religion at all. And I will say publicly, what we should be involved in is to make sure that
facilitating that idea.
Exactly right. We enable groups to be able to do what they want to do and create a community. And community has spiritual need, and we should make sure that we don't create hurdles in someone fulfilling the spiritual need. Now, should we be funding it? Absolutely not. I don't think we should be in that business because that's a losing proposition.
Right. Infrastructure and services is not matching residential growth. There's no doubt about that in Milton. You know, we've got lots of residential growth in the last, let's say, even just 5 years, but the infrastructure services don't match it. How are you going to balance the two with residential
so the new
growth? And how big will taxes be hit on that?
So new allocation plan we just approved in December at the regional meeting will expand literally every single regional road in Milton, from Steeles, Derry, Britannia, Tremaine, Trafalgar. James Snow will extend down to Oakville. We're creating a new road, 5.5 line, we're calling it right now, completely. So there's a ton of development and expansion coming up. I think...
Will taxes be hit?
Not because of that, because that's something we figured out funding of. And that's already been taken care of. So taxes will not be hit specifically for those roads and those issues. There is a lag, and that's what you see. I don't think we're actually keeping up fairly well with infrastructure, minus Britannia. Britannia should have been done by now. But other than that, when it comes to the road, we're actually doing a really, really good job. We don't get the credit for it. And the reason we don't get the credit for it is because there is a lag by design. Because growth comes in, then we get the money, and then we go build it. And people say, well, you know, why don't you go borrow money and do it before? And we could, but then, you know, what if the growth doesn't come? You and I will end up paying for these empty roads. And other communities have literally in the US, other parts of the world have gone bankrupt following the strategy. So we're not going to, because you know what? The economic cycles, we've seen this great boom for the last 15 years. There will be a recession at some point, next year, 10 years from now, who knows, right? And growth will slow down, then it'll pick up again, then we'll slow down again. And we don't want to end up in a way where we have $500 million in debt for roads that we built, that we don't and growth did not materialize and will materialize for the next 5 years.
Federal election 2015 versus 2019. Give me your take on it.
I think in 2019, the public wanted more policy issues. They wanted more policy discussions compared to 2015. In 2015, people just wanted change. They were tired of the conservative government, and nothing specific to conservative. Just after a while, people just want change. 10 years.
It's a 10-year cycle.
10-year cycle. They wanted someone new, and they were trying to figure out. If you look at the polls between NDP and Liberal, and at the end of the day, people sided with Trudeau, and he ended up winning. In 2019, there were a lot more angst, and people wanted more policy discussion. People wanted to understand, what are you going to do about the aging population? What are you going to do about social programs?
So 2019 was a much harder election for all parties.
I think it was much harder election for all parties. Absolutely.
Okay. Brand new official plan. It was from the 90s. You guys are revamping that now. Give me 2 or 3 of those talking points that you feel are important.
Yeah, so we revisit our official plan every 5 years and update it. So it's been updated, but it's still something that was overall designed in the 90s. Since the 90s, no one could have predicted how development has changed. In the 90s, you could buy land in Milton for $50,000 an acre.
Wow.
You'll be lucky to find something for less than $1.5 million an acre today. In fact, the most recent sale that happened in Milton was $3 million an acre. So when a developer is paying $3 million an acre, in order for them to even break even, the population has to be significantly denser.
Because people have to be willing to move. Into it.
And people are willing to move into it because, you know, even a condo in Milton now is going for more than $500,000, right? So when people look at Milton and say, you know what, you shouldn't have buildings in Milton, or you shouldn't have density in Milton. Well, the problem is that people in Milton are now paying prices people in Toronto were paying just 5 years ago. So you can't have these big single family, you can, but no one can afford it because a 2-car garage in Milton that costs $1.5 million.
At least.
Who's gonna, the people can't afford that. So we're redoing an official plan that looks at the new reality. And say, look, how do we design a community in the new reality? Because we had a very
with, let's say, design. 4 cars, 5 cars.
And we had a car-based design, right? We had, like, you know, design that required you to have 3 cars just to be able to survive in Milton. Because you couldn't get around. And so now, how do we design a walkable, cyclable, transit-oriented community where 80% of travel will still happen with cars, but at least 8 or 20% will happen without cars? And how do we design a community to accommodate 20%?
Inter transit, you know, etc.
Exactly.
What's one thing you hope to achieve in 2020?
2020. So I'll give you specifics. One, I want to make sure the education village gets started.
Okay.
That secondary area, we can't do any development in 2021 anyway, but I want to make sure that shovel and ground happens in 2021. And for that, we need to get all the approval lined up in 2020.
Right.
I also have a big goal for a GO station that I picked a position last election. I want to make sure that we have at least one new GO station approval on Trafalgar.
And would that happen this year, 2021?
I want to make sure that stuff happens this year, so it's done by the election. Right?
So by 2023.
And our vision is that if you look at Trafalgar, which is really between Milton and Mississauga, we want Trafalgar to be our high density corridor.
Right.
So if you look at the Square One area in Milton, we don't want that to be anywhere existing in Milton because infrastructure cannot handle it.
Right.
But we know there's demand for it, right? So rather than condo developers and building developers coming in and putting it here and there, we want to say, look, Trafalgar is a blank slate. And we tell everybody, look, if you move to this area, this will be high density, know it up front.
Right.
And so we designed the area to be high density corridor. Our plan is that Trafalgar corridor will have good 30, 40,000 people, 20, 30,000 jobs.
Right.
GO station, shopping and everything else. It'll be an amazing, very downtown high density area.
Right.
Connecting 407, QW and 401, like, transit oriented. I want to see a lot of that planning done in 2020. And finalize and some approvals in place.
Well, we'll have you in 2020. One, to talk about 2020 and what happened and plan for 2022. Thank you so much for being here, Zeeshan.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And there you have it. Thank you for watching House of Politics. Zeeshan Hamid, a regional councillor Ward 4 Milton, joined us, asking some good questions. He provides some good knowledge. Keep watching House of Politics because we'll be bringing more MPs, MPPs, councillors, and mayors across Canada focused with the idea of Ontario. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments in the box below because I love reading your comments. And if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please email us at info@canada1.tv below. Thank you very much for watching.